In this video, we're going to take a look at a brown ink by KWZ Old Gold. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the brown ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more of them, you could find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen, tremendous shading. We get nice shading in the stub. Great, really standout, awesome shading in the extra fine that only took 13 seconds to dry. The medium has also just tremendous shading with only 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both give no color variation, though it's really there in the writing. And it's more in the extra fine and medium than the stub because you see how they're both the same tone but quite a bit lighter than the stub. Smear test says you likely could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience, all the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then an Aurora Optima with a broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We get no bleeding, minor ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen. We see the extra fines quite a bit lighter than the stub. The medium, darker than the extra fine, nowhere near as dark as the stub. Stub does show some color variation in writing. Some, not tons. The extra fine really does show it off very well, and the medium does the best job. Extra fine took 20 seconds to dry, while the medium took 28. Scrubby for both show a little color variation, shows much better in the writing, and a smear test I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this really cool gray tone at the bottom that's working its way very evenly up. Then we get into this golden yellow that's there. Now that golden yellow or golden brown is really doing great. I mean, look at the browns and the yellows that are showing up there. It's gorgeous. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, and you see that that gray that had moved fairly evenly up is really gathered and formed a line at the bottom bonding with the paper, saying it may be a bit resistant. But what's not going to be a resistant aspect is the golden brown part of this ink, as it continued to move up just as it did in the first chromatography. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, nice shading in the stub. The extra fine's a lot lighter than the stub, really has some very good shading, only took 15 seconds to dry. Medium's darker than the extra fine, lighter than the stub, still with really good, amazing shading. 20 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both do show some color variation. Definitely happens in the writing, and the smear test, there's a very strong maybe that you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it does not handle itself well. I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I needed to go back and highlight. Now, water is moving all of that golden yellow out of the way, which we rather expected from the chromatography. It is still leaving some and quite a bit of the gray. Pen flush is moving most all of that golden yellow out of the way. There's still all of that gray is very much bonded with the paper. But it did only take water to get this out of my pen, so despite this, it was an easy cleanup. The 1/3 bleach solution, you're not going to need it, but it completely destroys this ink. The next writing sample is done on life paper. We have no bleeding and no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, nice shading in the stub. The extra fine that's quite a bit lighter than the stub, also really amazing shading all the way through. The medium's a little bit darker than the extra fine, nowhere near as dark as the stub, and it has great shading the whole way through. The extra fine took 12 seconds to dry, while the medium took 17. Scrubby for both show us that we get color variation, and the writing agreed. The smear test I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Old Gold has a viscosity of 2.05, meaning it's just a little bit wetter than normal. Now, if you're interested in how the viscosity is tested and all of that stuff, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now, let's take a look at Apica CD paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, great shading in the stub, extra fine, and the medium. The medium actually showing the least amount of shading here, and it looks fantastic. The extra fine's a lot lighter than the stub, while the medium's much darker than the extra fine and only a little bit lighter than the stub. Extra fine took 8 seconds to dry and the medium took 12. Scrubby for both show us color variation, and we get it, and the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Old Gold has an average dry time of 19 seconds, making it normal. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. No bleeding and no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen. We get no shading really in the stub. We get very little in the medium. It's best in the extra fine, which there it's not even showing as well as it did on all the other papers. Of course, this paper is a little bit more absorbent. Now the extra fine's lighter than the stub, while the medium's a little bit darker than the stub. Extra fine took 6 seconds to dry and a medium took 9. Scrubby for both does show a little color variation, and there is just a little there, not really very much. The smear test says you likely could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Old Gold, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a blue ink, also from KWZ, their Iron Gall Blue No. 5. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of KWZ's Old Gold? This is a really cool golden brown that shades well and gives tone variation. It's enjoyable. I do enjoy KWZ inks, and I think they do, among other colors, browns very well. I really want more of this and KWZ Honey. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I think you get tremendous shading out of a medium flow broad pen here. And if you really like the darker tone with less shading, then going with a wet medium is really a good way to go. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video we're going to take a look at Pilot Mixable Turquoise.